Full and uncut versions available on Patreon. Check in the description below.
Greetings once again, Pokemaniacs. Duuz-Diz-Din back again with more of the Pokemon Adventures manga, the story of X and Y, where previously, despite X and his friends' best effort to avoid Team Flare at any cost to keep them from getting their hands on X's Mega Ring and Mega Evolution Stone, they keep running into Team Flare regardless. Tierno had a run-in with one of their admins, taking their itinerary for taking over the Pokeball factory. So X and him had to team up to take that admin down. Later they have a run-in with an Elekid from Lumio City, as well as the Lumio's gym leader himself, Clemont. See, Elekid is looking for a Mega Evolution Stone, and after he evolves into Manectric, he's even more desperate to find it. Intrigued by the idea of Mega Evolution from watching X battle, but despite having Clemont's help, they're not the only ones looking for this Mega Evolution Stone. A Team Flare Grunt is also on the hunt, and this Grunt and his Tyrunt are a wily pair. Despite Clemont helping them get the Mega Evolution Stone, the Grunt takes it and takes off, followed by X and Trevor as well as the Manectric. Meanwhile, Clemont tells Y that her mother has been captured by Team Flare. So as X and Trevor tail the Grunt to the Perfume Palace, or Parfum, the Grunt manages to steal Kangaskhan's Mega Evolution Stone, but X fully accepts Manectric as his Pokemon, ready to take the Grunt on. Meanwhile, the technician in charge of the Pokemon storage system in Kalos, Cassius, after a brief discussion with Bill, overhears the commotion going on between X and his friends and the Team Flare Grunt. So he decides that he and his gang should get involved. But what does this mean? Join me as I find out, won't you? Alright, it's Pokemon Adventures X and Y, Volume 3/Volume 58. That's a lot of volume. That's a pretty cool cover. And a little bit of a spoiler that Y's fetchling will evolve. They're out inside of a chopper. Interesting. Well, X and Shauna are, as they watch it's Y having a sky battle in every sense of the word. I wonder who that woman is with all the curly hair, looking like an Ojo-sama. Okay, got Mega Gengar. Man, X's team just continues to grow. But wait, I thought Y had accepted Froakie as her Pokemon, but is only showing Fetchling. That's odd. Did she not fully accept Froakie? And readout of Who's Who, the 5 friends of Vanillville Town, Mega Evolution successors, gym leaders and friends, Team Flare, Sentia, Team Flare Scientific Team, Xerneas and Yveltal. Okay, interesting. Alright, let's jump in. First chapter is adventure number 19, Morphing Manectric. Spoilers on what's about to happen. Alright, we pick up with X commanding Manectric to use Wild Charge against Tyrunt, and Manectric manages to overwhelm Tyrunt, blasting it back along with the Grunt. Oh, they're in front of a statue of Reshiram. That's interesting. Why would that statue be here? Yeah, they're blasted back to the nearest statue of Reshiram, and the destructive force of Reshiram, Manectric's attack causes the Reshiram statue to fall over towards the Grunt, who leaps out of the way. The Grunt then says, Manectric surrounded itself with electricity and charged my Tyrunt, but his Pokemon received recoil damage from the attack. After all, it was powerful enough to break this Reshiram statue. What a waste! Who knows how much I could have sold this for? Why would you do that? And then says, wait, why didn't I see it before? I wouldn't have had to work so hard if I had just stolen this statue and sold it for the 5 million I needed to join. That would have been a much easier way to get into Team Flare and wear this uniform. Ugh! The gap between the rich and the poor is too great. The world is unfair. I want to live in a palace like this. I'd never be able to, no matter how hard I worked. Yeah, that's right. That's why we steal. We steal from those who have and give to those who don't. That's the right thing to do. The ones who don't being yourself. It's interesting finally getting to see the corrupted viewpoint of Team Flare through this one grunt interaction. Now, let's go look for the other Megastones, Tyrant. See you around. As they try to head off, Manectric jumps into their path, cutting them off. X calls out, "Once again, Elect," but the grunt says it's no use. Ooh. As Tyrant bites down on Manectric's snout and just does not let go. The grunt says, "It won't make a bit of difference if you attack at close range. You might not have noticed, but electric type attacks aren't very effective against Tyrant." Yeah, 'cause isn't it a rock type? Yeah, rock dragon. Dragon, rock dragon, ball Z. As Manectric is flung away by Tyrant into another statue of a vase. The grunt goes to take off with his Tyrant, saying, "Oh yeah, it's over, let's call it a day." But Manectric is undeterred, once again leaping in the path of the grunt. The grunt then says, "You're such a pain in the neck. You can't win, so why even try?" But shocking everyone, Trevor shouts, "Quiet!" Even his Flabebe is pissed off as Trevor says, "This isn't about type advantages. This Manectric Elect wasn't X's Pokemon until a moment ago. But then the grunt says, 'Oh, are you saying something? All I hear is blah, blah, blah.' But now Trevor speaks up, shouting, 'X asked Elect to use that move even though he knew there would be recoil damage. And Elect used the move. That means there's a bond between them. But you would never understand that because all you care about is money.'" The grunt takes a moment and then laughs. "You're so naive. So naive, I can't stop laughing. Even so, I can't forgive you for what you just said. Of course there are things you can buy with money, but there are even more bad things you can buy your way out of with money." I kind of hate that I agree with that. "I was going to let you go free, but I've changed my mind. Chew up that kid." He sends Tyrant in. But even though Trevor ends up tripping over himself, Flabebe steps in, smacking back Tyrant. Okay, we're actually finally getting to see his Flabebe in action. X then helps Trevor up, saying, "Are you okay?" Trevor says, "Thanks, X." X tells him, "That was a surprise. I've never seen you so fired up before." Trevor tells him, "I know it isn't like me to talk back like that, but I got really frustrated hearing him say all those things. The reason I was able to stand up for myself was because of you. I was confident you'd be able to win. That's why I confronted him. That's all I can do. Me and my Flabebe can't do anything to help you." The deck says, "That's not true. Your Flabebe is the key to this battle." Trevor says, "What? Oh, okay. I thought this was going to be a time for Y to kind of show off what she's got, but it looks like it's Trevor's." Meanwhile, we see Shauna and Tuna watching as Fetchling, Froakie, Skitty, and Corfish are not actually doing too well against the Esper. Meanwhile, Y's too busy basically manhandling Clement, shouting, "My mom was with the red suits with Team Flare? Why?" Clement says, "I don't know." But then someone suddenly says, "Ooh, you got quite a party going on here." Oh, it's Cassius. And Cassius and his crew are so cool looking. Cassius says, "4 Esper against Froakie, Fletchling, Corfish, and Skitty. And the Esper are kicking butt." Both Y and Clement are shocked to see Cassius and his crew. Cassius says, "If I'm going to join this battle, I want to fight against the winning team. For real." He then sends out his Gorgeous, who immediately goes in on one of the Esper, knocking them for a loop. Cassius says, "One down." Gorgeous then screeches at the other ones and then starts picking them all up. As Cassius says, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Shoot, I've captured all of them easily. Meanwhile, the rest of his crew says, "Hey Cassius, is that all? Boring, let's go back." Cassius tells them, "Oh, come on, for real. Wait, we're just getting to the fun part." Clement then looks over at the Esper, thinking to himself, "There's something I've always wanted to find out. Esper, here. There's a perfect opportunity for me to see what it looks like beneath them." His little extendo arm goes for one of the Esper's ears as he thinks, Maybe their ears will help me come up with a new idea for an invention, like my ATOM model. Cassius sees what Clement is doing and then says, hey, don't lift up its ear. Clement says, huh? Why not? What the heck? Are those eyes? Oh God, what just happened? Suddenly Clement is knocked high into the air. What just happened there? Wait, what is it about Esper's ears? Okay, let's see. The Bulbapedia entry says Esper's ears are quite large in proportion to his body and folded. Beneath his ears are two ring-shaped yellow organs. These organs emit Esper's intense psychic power. It has no control over its power and would leak out if his ears were not sheltering the organs. Oh, that's weird. I did not know that. Psychic organ. Well, and I hope Clement can help himself land safely. Meanwhile, over with X and the others, no matter how the grunt and his tyrant move, just Manectric will not let them pass. The grunt then says, what a pain! Hurry up and stop it, tyrant! Earthquake! And tyrant rattles and rolls Manectric as it falls to the ground. The grunt says, a super effective move, and your Pokemon is fainted. Too bad for you. Adieu. And he goes to take off, only for Manectric to bite down on the man's ankle. Yeah. Oh, Manectric then lifts him into the air and then starts dragging the dude. The grunt saying, why? But then Flabebe flies up next to the grunt. The grunt says, Flabebe, you must have used grassy terrain earlier on, and that had the power of the earthquake attack. Weird. Why you? And he seems to grab Flabebe. But he only grabs Flabebe's flower. Grunt says, huh? Just the flower? Where is it? Only for us to see that Flabebe has rooted around in the grunt's pocket, taking back the Mega Evolution stones, giving one stone to Manectric. X immediately uses his keystone to Mega Evolve Manectric into Mega Manectric, which I still feel like Mega Manectric is kind of a silly look, all things considered. But I don't hate it. Trevor says, he did it. The grunt says, he got me. Manectric then roars and seems to summon something. Trevor says thunderclouds are quickly gathering, and the grunt tries his best to run away with his tyrant, saying, oh no, as lightning strikes all around him. He screams and is blasted by a bolt of lightning. The grunt then gets up disheveled and banged up, saying, my style and uniform. The only way to prevent Team Flare from giving me the boot now is to capture Manectric with the Manectite and take it to Zerasic, only for something to be pointed right in his face. Is Manectric's mane? Oh no. But X is standing behind Manectric with Trevor. Oh, I love that little Flabebe is right under the back of Manectric too. As X says, let's see you try. Ooh, Chad energy. Aura farming hard. The grunt turns to his tyrant saying, maybe not today. Okay, see you around. And as they run off, he's once again struck by lightning. Both Trevor and Manectric laugh at him, and Flabebe too, I think, as Mega Manectric de-evolve. Flabebe then hands over the Mega Evolution Stone to Kangaskhan. Trevor says a Mega Evolved Kanga is a Mega Kangaskhan, and Lucario Mega Evolves into Mega Lucario. So I'm guessing Elect's Mega Evolved form would be a Mega Manectric. Yeah, you just add Mega to it, dude. X says, that sounds right to me, as he sees the grunt's itinerary that pretty much shows that exact thing. Pinsir uses Pincerite to become Mega Pinsir. I'm not going through this whole list. X says, plus it's written here. Trevor looks at it saying, the red suit dropped this? X tells him, yeah, you must have been using it as a guide to gather all the Mega Stones. In other words, this is a list of Megastone. Trevor says, you're amazing, X. You got the Megastone back. You have Mega Evolved Manectric. You even found a Megastone list we had no idea existed. And now, X says everything will be just perfect. If Y and the others are alright, that is. Trevor says, yeah, I have to let my Flabebe find a new flower too. X says, yep, it's the VIP of this battle. He's so nice. Suddenly cut to later where Trevor says, what? Clement was blown away somewhere by Esper's psychic powers as they're in Cassius's trash-filled house. He says, I warned him not to lift up Esper's ear. Trevor then whispers over to Tierno, what are you doing in this dump? And who's that scary-looking person? Tierno says, not really sure how to respond, but an angry Cassius says, I can hear you, you know, for real. I am Cassius. I maintain the Kalos region Pokemon storage system. For real. And these girls, my assistants or friends or whatever, help me with my work. They've got no dough, no family to rely on, and no place to sleep. That's how they ended up here. They look a little scary and unsavory, but they're actually good people. For real. Unsavory, wow. The one with pigtails says, hiya. The one with the Mihawk says, yo. The one with short hair doesn't really say anything. And the little one, who the one with short hair hides behind, says, hi. Trevor gives a bit of a bow, saying, hello. Huh? Where's Y? Shauna says, look behind you. Oh, as we see that Y is in a fetal position, which startles Trevor, who says, hey, what happened to Y? Shauna says, Clement saw her mother. Before he could tell her anything more about it, Cassius says, those 3 Esper blasted him away. X questions, what about the 4 Esper? Cassius says, that one stayed behind because it was confused, and it's been there ever since it came to. Why don't you take care of it, Emma? Oh, there's Emma. Okay, so are we not doing the Looker's whatchamacallit? Did Cassius replace Looker? Yeah. Huh. Because from what I know about Emma, she shouldn't be here. Oh no, is Looker not showing up in this story arc? I mean, that was one of the things I was looking forward to. Because Looker's like this through line ever since he first appeared. That was one of the things that made the fact that he was kind of getting a little dissed in the previous story arc a little bit better. Let me know whether or not Looker appears in this story arc. Because dang, that's kind of a bummer. I was kind of looking forward to it. And we see the young girl Emma with a leather jacket and the little Esper cuddled up to her over in the corner. I wonder why they chose to do this with Cassius, because as far as I know, Cassius doesn't have a gang, or does he? Does Cassius have a gang? Let me know if that's a manga-only thing. Okay. He's gone from the Perfume Palace, a luxury palace constructed 300 years ago by a king who wished to display his power to all, to Campfire Town. This ancient town was once famous for the long-neglected battered home of a noble family. Okay. Next is adventure number 20, connecting with Gardevoir. Okay. We cut to a few years ago, where we see Karina entering some kind of mine. As she makes her way up, she says, phew, I finally made it up here. Come on, you can do it, as she helps her Riolu up to where she's at. She says, tired, Riolu? But Riolu shows that he's tough. He points in the distance to a glowing object, saying, we've come a long way, huh? Oh, hey, look over there. That's the sundial in Anistar City. They say it fell from outer space. Sundial? I never knew we could see it from so far away. It's already 8 p.m. It's getting late, she says, looking at a pocket watch. Then says, but I have to find it today, no matter what. The Megastone. For you. But then Riolu notices something shining in the distance. She says, what's wrong? But then she sees the gleam too. She questions the bush on the other side of the river. You sense something there? Riolu gives a nod. Karina says, but the suspension bridge has fallen, so I can't cross it. What should I do? She then sees a minecart, grabs it, saying, this is it. Hold on tight. And she brings it over to the edge so that she can ride it down with her roller skate. She says, the trolley and my skates will combine the momentum from both, and as she nears the turn over the ravine, she lets go of the trolley, saying, now. And Bone Rush! As she leaps the gap, Riolu uses Bone Rush as a kind of makeshift helicopter, keeping her aloft so she can get across. She barely manages to make it, kind of bumping her knee a little bit, rolling into the brush. She wipes her nose confidently, saying, success. As she makes her way over to where Riolu is at, she questions, it's there? And as they go into the bush. She's surprised by what she sees. As they make their way back to the tower, we see several other students of Gherkin, and as he turns, he says, Karina, you have returned. Have you fulfilled the 2 assignments I asked you to do? Karina brandishes the Mega Evolution Stone, saying, ta-da, and a newly evolved Lucario, questioning, how is it? As she races around the Gherkin, she says, find the Mega Stone and raise Riola until it evolves into a Lucario. I've completed your assignment perfectly, right? It was just as you said, grandfather. Pokemon that have a possibility of Mega evolving are drawn to their stones. Gherkin says, good, well done. 99 out of 100. Karina grows angry, questioning, huh? Why isn't it 100 out of 100? Gherkin chops her on the head, which should be okay, she's wearing a helmet, saying, I told you to call me Guru Gherkin and not grandfather here, didn't I? The other students laugh, but we see that he kind of bruised his hand because of, well, her helmet, but he hides it, saying, other than that, you did perfect. Like I promised, we will hold the succession ceremony. Karina says hooray as she jumps for joy with her Lucario. And so the ceremony begins in front of the other students. Karina kneels in front of Gherkin as he says, I, Gherkin, keeper of the keystone, shall bestow these words to you. As a successor, you must have high integrity. You must live up to your words. You must be spirited. Do you understand what I'm saying? Karina says, nope. Gherkin says, oh, basically, remain true to your heart. Do what you say and have a strong will. Something like that. These words have been passed down through our family. Karina nods. Gherkin smiles, saying, from now on, you and Lucario must use these words as a measure of your actions every day. Do you do that? Karina responds, yes. Gherkin hands over the glove that we normally see her wearing, saying, I bestow you with the keystone. It has been embedded into the glove like mine. Karina places the glove on her hand and looks at the keystone. Gherkin questions, huh? What's wrong? Aren't you trying it? Karina smiles a bit, saying, I'm a bit nervous. Gherkin turns to his student, saying, and watch our battle and learn from it. All of his students then say, the light of my keystone and the light of the Mega Stone merge. Oh, some of my favorite Pokemon are here. Got an Alakazam and a Scizor. And thus we have the Mega evolved forms of Gherkin's Pokemon and his student. Mega Heracross, Mega Medicham, Mega Alakazam, and Mega Scizor. I gotta admit, Mega Scizor is probably my favorite out of the looks. He says, behold, Mega Evolution. Karina says, okay, I'll do it. But as she goes to activate it, the voice says, Karina, Karina, Karina. And Karina says, what is it? I'm just getting to the good part. Oh, as Karina is suddenly awoken by a mysterious figure. Karina, why are you sleeping in the middle of the woods? She says, who are you? The enemy? Tower of Mastery was attacked and grandfather and I are currently roaming around and hiding. I knew they'd come after us. I never expected it to be so soon. Ah, grandfather. The figure says, you're not wrong about the enemy, but I'm not one of them. As for your grandfather, Karina notes, a woman? The woman points to the distance where Karina sees Gherkin and his Mega Evolved Heracross fighting off a horde of Skrelp. I'm not really familiar with that Pokemon. Karina calls out to her grandfather, while Gherkin just says, hey, Karina, you've woken up. As the Skrelp attack, Karina and her Lucario go leaping in, beating them back. Oh, speaking of which, Lucario. One thing I can't remember if I did or not. We had previously Pangoro show up. It's one of my favorites. I just can't remember if I added it to the little display I put up here. But I do love Pangoro. Karina joins her grandfather at his back, saying, as Gherkin says, you seem to be having trouble sleeping. But were you watching a dream? Karina says, a dream of my succession ceremony. Everyone from the family was there, and I could see the fireworks from Parfum Palace. Gherkin says, I see. Karina then says, grandfather, now is the time to talk about that. Gherkin questions, you want me to explain what's going on, right? There really is nothing to it. The enemy attacked after you fell asleep, that's all. So Gherkin was trying to let her get a little bit of rest in. Karina says in that case, she activates her keystone, and Lucario Mega evolves into Mega Lucario and leashes a blast of aura upon the Sprout with a punch and another punch and another punch, knocking them all back. Suddenly, a figure moves in saying, your fists are so quick that they don't have any trouble dealing with a large group. It's just as I've heard. Chalor City gym leader, Karina. Karina turns, questioning, who's there? The man announces himself, saying, Team Flare admin, Chalmers. And at his back is a Dragology. Suddenly, the Skrelp all move out. Oh, did they rush down Gherkin and his Mega Heracross, dragging them into the water? Because you see a large splash and Karina moving towards the water, calling out to her grandfather. Chalmers says, once we drag him into the water, Skrelp will have the upper hand. They will camouflage themselves as rotten kelp and poison him. Gherkin and Heracross will be poisoned. Karina leans over the water saying, Grandfather! Grandfather! But suddenly the unknown figure puts their hand on Karina's shoulder. Oh, is this Diantha? In much Chalmers' bewilderment, the unknown figure says, I'll take care of the guru. Karina says, you called my grandfather guru. That means, and suddenly the person strikes a pose, which, yeah, it's definitely, especially with the Mega Evolution Stone on Gardevoir's head. The figure brings out her Gardevoir, saying he must have integrity, you must live up to your words, you must be spirited, and never forgotten the teaching of the guru. Hey, thought maybe I had Gardevoir in my favorites. I guess not. She commands Gardevoir to use Psychic, blasting away the Skrelp and lifting Gherkin and Mega Heracross out of the water. Yep, sure enough. As Chalmers looks to the water, he sees all of the Skrelp knocked out. He says, a psychic Pokemon powerful enough to spin the entire swamp around. The figure moves towards Gherkin, calling him Guru. He says, Hiya, thanks for helping me. Only for Karina to question, Grandfather, who is she? Gherkin says, I'm sure you know that a number of people have taken part in the succession ceremony in the past, right? This is a grave situation where we had to abandon the tower. She's the first person who rushed to the rescue. Among all the successors I contacted, this accessory I gave her is a charm pendant. As Diantha takes off her hat and sunglasses, Karina says, the famous actress everyone knows is... Gherkin says, that's right, the successor who can Mega Evolve her Gardevoir. Diantha, and she does just that. Chalmers says, go, Dragology, Sludge Bomb, while Diantha tells her Mega Gardevoir to use Psyshock. Karina jumps in saying, Diantha, I'll help, but Diantha says, don't worry. Now that Gardevoir has evolved into Mega Gardevoir, its ability has changed too. It's changed from Trace to Pixelate. Do you know what that means? Karina thinks to herself saying, normal type moves will become fairy type moves? Diantha says bingo, and she has Mega Gardevoir use Hyper Beam on Dragology. Chalmers runs off saying, retreat! And as the sun begins to rise, Karina smiles saying, we'll be invincible with 3 Mega Evolved Pokemon. But Gherkin says, now don't get carried away, Karina. Diantha won't be with us all the time, you know. Diantha says, no. I'll be with you all the way through. Karina turns saying, really? Diantha says, of course, that's why I came here. Karina questions, but what about your job as an actress? Diantha says, don't worry about it. I finished most of my major work beforehand, so I've got a break for some time. Gherkin then says, Kalos is in crisis. Is that how you see the situation? Diantha says, yes. The enemy are clearly after the Mega Evolution, but the important thing is why they are after it. What do they intend to do after they get a hold of it? Gherkin takes a moment, saying, He thinks to himself, they call themselves Team Flare tonight. But back then, he remembers Essentia's words saying, what is Team Flare? Gherkin thinks, is there another organization who is after Mega Evolution? Diantha then says, Guru, have you heard about the incident in Vanilleville Town? Gherkin says, Karina told me about it. Diantha says, the 2 legendary Pokemon that appeared have apparently changed shape. One transformed into a tree, and the other transformed into a cocoon. Gherkin says, oh my. Diantha says, and the enemies have already discovered the whereabouts of the tree. Gherkin says, which means we must find the cocoon quickly. We then cut to Malva, the reporter we've seen previously, moving through the halls of some area, saying, Hello? Right. I found a beautiful one that suits the boss perfectly. I've prepared to make a capture. How about you? What? They failed again? And Chalmers? You assigned him to the next mission. You're such a softy as always. I respect your kindness, but it's only going to lead to a huge, unredeemable failure one day. What? Stop. Diantha joined them. I see. Is that so? That's why. And suddenly someone moves out of a door saying, "Oh, you're on soon." Malva moves away her headset, saying, "Talk to you later, Zarosik." Suddenly, she's on air with someone saying, "We're bringing you the latest news to all Holocast users. Next is Showbiz. Yesterday, Kalos' renowned actress Diantha finished filming her latest movie, which is scheduled to come out in theaters next spring. She says she'll be taking a break for a while." Malva says, maybe she's going on vacation. This is her first long break since her debut, so I'm sure the entertainment reporters will be all over her. Of course, I, Malva, will be going after her too. We'll be going after her too in a number of ways. Okay. See, I know that in the games, I think it's only revealed towards the end of the game that Malva was a member of Team Flare. I think it was like a lot of context clues and stuff like that. But whether or not she is an enemy or ally is kind of like up in the air because she kind of just gets to do a lot of her own thing over the course of the games and even the anime. I think the anime paints her as a more nicer figure because I think she works against Team Flare, but I'm not really sure. Yeah, I think she has some kind of change of heart in the anime. Alright, so our current location, plus Karina and the others, we've gone from Chalor City, the seaside hometown of the Tower of Mastery, where the legend of the mysterious stones lives on, to Route 12 of 4-Age Road. Frolicking Skiddo can be seen and ridden at the Bodimer Ranch, located beside the breezy sea. To Comarine City, an exclusive resort area made popular thanks to its clear skies and mild atmosphere. At arriving in Comarine City, they moved along the coast to the northeast, and then next to Route 14, Lever Natural Trail. The lush tree and boggy swamp of this trail give off an eerie vibe, even in broad daylight. Okay. They've done a lot of traveling, apparently. Alright, next is adventure number 21, Glittering Diancie. Alright, we pick up at Campfire Town, or Campfire? How do you pronounce this? Campfire, and Shabanu Castle. We pick up with a interesting looking old man looking at a painting of Diancie. He says, "The body glowing in pink, most beautiful glow in the world. Beautiful Pokemon Diancie. Beautiful, beautiful, oh beautiful, so beautiful." Starts rolling on the floor saying, "Just for once I want to hold Diancie in my hands. No, I just want to take one look at it. Diancie, Diancie." A squadron of butlers appear saying, "Master, we'll go out to search for Diancie again." The man says, I'm counting on you, my fellow servants. Fellow servants? Huh. As the men race out, he calls from one of the windows, "I hear that every millionaire in the world is searching for it. You mustn't fall behind on the search." The butler say, "Yes, sir." Okay, then. We pick up with Karina and Diantha camping out. And we're getting a whole lot of Karina. Honestly, it's starting to feel like Karina is like the secondary protagonist in this series. She says, then I have a chance of becoming a champion too, right, Diantha? Diantha says, "Right. You have a fine possibility, Karina. I've heard of a trainer in a different region who worked as a gym leader for several years before becoming a champion." Oh, that's a complicated situation. That's Wallace. Oh, cool. Karina says, but it must be hard to rise up to become the champion. You have to defeat the Elite Four, who are really skilled trainers. Hey, what are the Elite Four like? You protect the Pokemon League with them, so you must get along with them." Diantha says, "Well, I guess you could say we're good friends." Karina says, "I was a steel-type trainer in armor." Diantha says, "Lungstrom? He's a calm man, but he can be a bit stubborn." Karina then says, "The dragon-type lady." Diantha says, Dressnut is a friendly woman who is always smiling. Kriana says the water guy with a menacing expression. Danza says Sebald is actually a top-class chef who loves to treat people to his food. Karina says, wow, they're all so different. And what about the news reporter? Dan says, a fiery woman, and she keeps that fire hidden inside her too. Malva, huh? Well, yeah, Malva, one of the Elite Four. That's an interesting angle, because knowing this, how to put it, because with the manga, the idea of an Elite Four member being a bad guy, you're no stranger to that. Many of the Elite Four were actually not good guys when it comes to the manga, but as per the actual games, completely foreign concept. And I think that's why the anime kept Malva a little bit more heroic, all things considered. That's why the idea of Malva being a member of Team Flare is so shocking, because she's part of the Elite Four. You have to face her later down the line, so the idea of her not being present is kind of a foreign concept, all things considered. And considering that in the game's recently time of recording, we're about to return to Kalos with Pokemon ZA, is Malva still a member of the Elite Four? I do wonder, because the manga has done a pretty good job of kind of adapting certain elements and working around certain kind of plot holes. But then again, I don't think the manga really has adapted more kind of side game, which would be Pokemon ZA. So will they adapt it? Will they not? You can kind of get around that with Legends, since Legends kind of takes place in the past, and you don't necessarily need to address that in any way, shape, or form. But ZA is actually the future of Kalos, a year or two down the line. So, I really do wonder, will the manga adapt that in any way? And will Malva still be a member of the Elite Four? What will the manga do with this character? Karina says, don't you like her? Hansa says, what? Why? Karina says, you looked a little depressed. Hansa says, I'm a failure as an actress. It's not that we don't get along. I fought against the other three before, and I've met them in private too. But I've never done any of that with Malva. One reason is because she's a very busy person, but I've never been able to fathom her. Oh, well then, we finish eating, so let's go and help the guru. Karina says, okay, and they head into a tent. But as Karina heads to the tent, Danza notices several Carbink drifting about in the grass. Danza thinks to herself, Carbink? They seem to be running away in a hurry. Maybe they met a wild Pokemon they don't like? Oh, we see that Gherkin is, touching up the Megastones? Both Diantha and Karina's. Karina enters the tent saying, need any help, grandfather? Gherkin says, no, I'm fine. I wash off the sludge from the swamp, and all I need to do now is to check the keystone. Karina and my Mega Gloves and Diantha's Mega Charm. The keystones embedded in them still retain a very high purity. I have created many accessories, including the Mega Ring, but the most important thing is its degree of purity. Interesting. Karina then says, hey, grandfather, I've always wanted to ask you, but can't you just give the keystone to the trainer as it is, or embed all of them in the same kind of accessory? Gherkin puts his hand on her shoulder, saying, you've started to use your imagination. That's good. The keystone is a stone that will draw out what is inside that trainer. That is why I will decide on the shape of the accessory after getting to know that person. It needs to be worn in a way that will fit that trainer. Karina says, what a strange stone. Gherkin tells her, that's right, that is the mystery of the Mega Evolution. They all put it back on their keystones. They then exit the tent, Gherkin telling them, and because of that mystery, Pokemon that have the ability of Mega Evolution often become a target. He then thinks to himself, and there's another Pokemon of that nature here too. They then enter a nearby cave, look into a nearby cave. Dancer saying, oh my, there's a cave here. Maybe the Carbink I saw escaped from here? Gherkin says, huh? What do you mean? Dancer points to the tall grass saying, I saw a group of Carbink over there. and it looked as if they were. Gurkha says, They answer questions, is something bothering you? Gherkin tells him, you two, could you help me? To be honest, I decided to camp out here because I was worried about this cave. Of course, we need to hurry with the cocoon too, but as they make their way in the cave, Karina says, what a steep slope. Diantha says, right, this isn't a cave. It's more like an entrance that goes down to a high-temperature underground location. Gherkin then says, just as I thought. Karina says, carbink, as they see a bunch of them all passed out. Diantha says, and so many of them too. Karina holds one saying, how awful. Why would anyone do this? Gherkin says, carbink are a jewel Pokemon. If you polish their bodies, you can sell them for a high price. In other words, it's for money. But a voice calls out, wrong. The voice approaches them, holding Diantha, the jewel Pokemon. Diancie, the jewel Pokemon, not Diantha. Gherkin says, Diancie. The masked man says, so you know about the Pink Princess. Gherkin says, you attacked the carbink to lure out Diancie that lived with them. The man says, that's right, I'm a jewel thief, you see. My client told me we'll pay you any sum of money if you want if you capture Diancie. So I approached an impoverished noble who had the documents on Diancie and found out about this cave while I pretended to be his servant. That feels like a whole bunch of unnecessary steps, but okay. Princess grandfather, Pink Princess as in the Pokemon you were talking about when we left the Tower of Mastery? Gherkin says, that's right. Its name is Diancie. So the documents at the Tower of Mastery weren't the only documents left on it, huh? Diancie is a mutated carbink. They live in the cave accompanied by a large group of carbink and are known as the Royal Pink Princess from their beautiful flowing pink color. So I must deliver Diancie to my client. Would you be so kind as to let me pass? The thief says. Karina says, no. No way. The man then says, if you want to fight, go. Binacle, the weirdest Pokemon I've ever seen. One of the weirdest. As he said, it's 3 Binacle. Karina sends out her Lucario. Gherkin sends out his Heracross. And Diantha sends out her Gardevoir. But oof, the man's Binacle managed to get in some real hits on their Pokemon. Karina says 2 heads on 1 rock. Feels like I'm fighting against 6 Pokemon at once. And more or less, let's be honest. Gherkin then whispers to Karina, Diantha, Karina, we're going to let them out of the cave first. Karina questions, huh? Why? Diantha whispers, the guru must have a plan. Let's pretend to have been defeated and let them go out. Their Pokemon stagger backwards, pretending to be defeated. How dramatic. The thief runs past with its binacle, saying, excuse me. The Gherkin then calls out, okay, go after him. And they all quote, the light of my keystone and the light of the Megastone merge. Behold, Mega Evolution! And out of the cave pops Mega Heracross, Mega Lucario, and Mega Gardevoir. Gherkin tells the others, remember, lure them out to the top of the hill. They say, yes, sir. Mega Heracross fires, as well as Mega Lucario and Mega Gardevoir. The thief swerves in a serpentine motion with his binacle, avoiding their attack, making his way to the top of the hill. But at the top of the hill, Diancie sees the moon and begins to glow. Gherkin tells the two, look, as Diancie's brilliance continues to increase, letting off a massive blast of energy in the process, frying the thief. He then falls to the ground, releasing Diancie. Gherkin says, Moonblast, an attack that uses the power of the moon. He says, I didn't know it could use a move like this. There was nothing on it that impoverished nobles. There's nothing on it in that impoverished noble's documents. A voice then calls out, well, sorry to be impoverished. The noble rides up in his fancy car, looking upon the thief. Thief says, Master. The noble says, I always knew something was going on. Ever since I hired you, documents went missing, and you'd run off on your own when I asked everyone to look for Diancie. And on top of that, you were contacting sketchy people, too. I followed you here, and just as I thought, you were planning on stealing Dancy from me from the start, right? The thief recoils. Gherkin tells the noble that the man said he was looking for Dancy for a client who'd pay him a handsome sum. The noble says, I knew it! I bet you were being so blatant thinking he's just an impoverished noble. He'd never notice, right? And he begins to spit upon the thief. One of his butlers holding him back, saying, Master, that's enough. The noble says, You're fired. On top of that, I'm turning you into the police. The thief says, no. But the clouds begin to cover the moon. The thief tells him, You should be thanking me. You were so desperate to see Diancie, I found it for you. The noble says, What? The thief then says, Barnacle, the moon is hidden by the clouds. Don't let Diancie go. And he sends all three into attack. But as they approach Diancie charges up another attack, unleashing it upon the Barnacle, knocking them all into the thief. The noble says, Oh, what a beautiful move. Gherkin says, That's called Diamond Storm. Diancie has the power to condense the carbon in the atmosphere to create diamonds. This is an attack move that makes use of that. Diancie approaches Diancie, saying, You can use it to attack and defend yourself at once, huh? Gherkin then says to the thief, Your Barnacle has all fainted. Do you still want to continue, or will you go to the police? The thief takes off, saying, I won't choose either of them. But Gherkin has Mega Heracross use bullet speed upon the thief, downing him, blasting him, essentially. But he still manages to race off. And he then nears a beach where a figure on top of a Pyroar, female Pyroar, namely, tells him, Looks like you failed. He says, Lady Mova, I'm sorry, but please take these, as he hands over several diamonds. She eyes him, saying, What large, beautiful diamonds. What are these? The thief bows, saying, Diancie created them. There's not much of a substitute for Diancie, but please accept them. Malva approaches, saying, I'll take them. The thief then says, is that all for this mission? In that case, could you pay me? And preferably for the diamonds I gave you too, since I practically made Diancie create them. Malva says, Right. How's this for your payment? And he has Pyroar just burn the dude. He goes racing into the ocean, screaming. And as Malva walks off, she says, It's always the useless people who are shameless enough to ask for rewards. But I've gotten hold of so many beautiful diamonds, so I'll call it even. Well, it's kind of a shame that she seems to be a bad guy, because I think she's kind of a baddie. Malva probably my favorite Elite Four member out of anyone in the Kalos region. The noble says, Oh, how beautiful. I even managed to see beautiful moves like Moonblast and Diamond Storm. I have no regret. He grabs a hold of Gherkin's hand, saying, I'll destroy all the documents I have so the bad people won't take advantage of me. I will never look for Diancie again. Gherkin says, If you could do that, Diancie will be happy too. And as the sun begins to rise, Gherkin says, the noble says, Well then, let's go back to Trevenu Castle. And he takes off. Gherkin, Karina, and Diantha watch. But suddenly, Diancie touches Karina's glove, enamored with their keystone. Karina says, What? What's the meaning of this, grandfather? Diancie then goes over to Gherkin's keystone. As Gherkin says, Diancie is a Pokemon that can Mega Evolve too. I was worried about those who were after its power, but people who were after Diancie for its monetary value and beauty aren't much of a threat. However, a safe refuge has been discovered. It would probably be better for it to move to a different location along with Carbate. I thought Diancie would end up as the Pokemon of Diantha or something. But they bid Diancie farewell, the royal pink princess, as she takes off with the Carbink. Oh, what the heck? We then see that Gherkin's leg is starting to bleed again. He thinks to himself, the injury I received at the tower and the poison from growth at the swamp are eroding my body away. It's like I cannot force myself as much as I used to. Gherkin ain't gonna die in this, is he? He thinks to himself, but I cannot let them find out and get thrown into a hospital. Must meet him as soon as possible to properly succeed the power of Mega Evolution to him. That's why he's worth it, because he didn't think that I guess he wanted X to one day seek him out, maybe. That's unfortunate. All right, current location, we've gone from Camphor Town. This ancient town was once famous for its long-neglected manor home of a noble family, to Route 7, Reverie Walk. The longest single road in the Kalos region runs straight alongside one of its greatest rivers to the Battle Chateau. Interesting. Another battle location? Like the battle towers and stuff? And the last chapter of this video is adventure number 22, Dancing Pavilion. Okay, we see a flashback of Grace back in their home. Oh no, back at X's house, saying, X, I brought you breakfast. And she sees a tray with an empty plate and a note saying, thank you for the meal. Grace says, oh, I see you enjoyed your dinner. Good. She then sits down outside the door saying, guess what, X? It turns out that Y has been doing pretty well at the Sky Trainer training school. She starts to sulk then, saying, I thought for sure she'd give up after a month or so, but she's continuing on with the second term, which starts tomorrow. Do you think she's going to give up on becoming a Rhyhorn racer? Well, do you? He puts a note out saying, don't ask me. Ray says, you're so unhelpful. Would it kill you to share your thoughts with me once in a while? Y then bursts in saying, X, good morning. But Grace continues on saying, there has to be some way to get Y to quit training to become a Sky Trainer. Do you have any idea how to stop her? With Y coming up the stairs saying, Mom, what are you talking to X about? Grace says, there are so many other things she could. Y says, it isn't up to you. I chose to become a Sky Trainer. Are you trying to stand in my way? Grace says, each person has a unique talent, you know. Y says, it's not fair for you to decide what my talent is. Well, X puts a note out saying, did you two take this outside? Grace says, we can talk about it after I come back from my trip. I leave tonight. Look after the house for me, okay? He heads down the stairs saying, I'll be back after tomorrow in the afternoon. Y says, you might as well stay there. Don't bother coming back. Oh. Ooh. Yeah, not a great course of words right there. The narration reads, that was the conversation they had the day before the incident. Oh, is that the Battle Chateau? We see Cassius arrive in a van like frickin' Scooby-Doo. He says, hi, I'm Cassius. I'm here to do maintenance on your Pokemon storage system. The butler says, I'm so glad you're here. Cassius says, the Battle Chateau is really impressive. The man says, thank you. He then goes back to the van, telling his gang, go on inside and do the system check for me. The one with pigtails says, yep. Cassius then tells the group, and don't steal anything, okay? It's their own fault if they leave But the one pigtail says it's their own fault if they leave their valuables lying around. The one with the mohawk says, I'll try not to. The one with short hair doesn't say anything. While the smaller one says, okay, I'll do my best. See, the one with short hair and the little one always seem to be together, just all over each other. It makes me wonder, it's like, are they like a couple or something, or are they just really close? It's kind of cute. He then says, hey, Emma, that Esper seems to really like you. Esper looks to Emma saying, as Emma says, his name is Mimi. Cassie says, Mimi, huh? Emma then says, I'll go help them. Cassie says, okay, thanks. As they enter into the Battle Chateau, Cassius then opens the back and says, the coast is clear. You can come out. As out pops X, Trevor, Shauna, and Tierno, as well as the little Rhyhorn with the tent still on its back. Can it not enter a Pokeball? Huh. Cassie says, sorry it was so cramped in there. You still got quite a distance to go before you reach Silage City. Take a break and stretch a little. He then closes the back saying, while I work on this job, don't get out of the car. For real. Chino sits in the seat saying, ugh, I'm pooped. They all just stretch out in the big van. We then have the narration saying, going to Silage City was Cassius' idea. We flash back to Cassius saying, it's simple. For real. Before I said he saw Grace in front of a soda pop stand at Silage City with his rock-type specialist friend, right? Trevor says, yes, as we still see Y sulking over in the corner, as Cassius says, it was definitely Rhyhorn Racer Grace, this girl's mom. I'll take you all there. To Silage City, I mean. For real. Oh, the kids are shocked. Cassius says, huh? What's the matter? Trevor says, Nothing. We just thought, well, we're wondering if you're a nice person or not. Cassius laughs. I am most definitely a nice person. Then again, I'm nothing special, for real. Cassie says, when you're tech support for the storage system, you get calls from all over Callus asking you to fix this or that device, for real. Okay, I'm starting to realize why they probably left out Looker. Maybe because they didn't want it to be as known. They wanted the conspiracy of Team Flare to be more of a secret. If you have someone actively hunting them or investigating them, that might just kind of hinder the conspiracy a little bit because I don't know, it would repeat a lot of the same beats as with Team Plasma previously. If Looker was, coming in saying, I'm here investigating the rumblings of a conspiracy within Kalos. I guess they're really just trying to sell the fact that Team Flare is just that so obscure. Because if Looker was aware of it and the Bureau and all that, they'd immediately almost be set upon. So at most, we might see Looker at the very, very end. Cassie says, I got another call to go to today right after this, for real. You're welcome to ride in our vehicle with us. It's an old rattle trap, though, so don't expect a luxury cruise. Trevor's narration and reads, he joked around a lot, but it seems like we can trust him. We told him about the people who have been attacking us, and he offered to help us travel incognito. And we see his crew setting out the blanket over them in the back of the van. Tierno saying, hope we find... Oh, in present day, Tierno says, hope we find out more about why his mother's whereabouts when we get to Satellite City. Shauna lifts up the blanket covering Rhyhorn, saying, yeah, but don't forget how upset Y is. Yeah, it looks like it's Y's turn to be in the depression blanket. You see, she still hasn't fully, come out of her Skytrainer uniform. Trevor says, it must have been a huge shock for her. Tierno says, finding out you're her mother was seen in the company of Team Flare. Shauna says, things don't seem right with Y like this. She's just like her. She just isn't her usual upbeat self. As Trevor looks to Y, his narration reads, and now, no matter what we've gone through, she was always our leader. I guess Y has been a lot more torn up than we realized over her mother. Shauna then says, huh? Where's Exy? Trevor says, X. Taylor looks around saying, he's gone. They then look outside, Trevor saying, could he be? Yep, and sure enough, X is in the tall grass with Manectric. Trevor says, what is he doing? And suddenly out of the tall grass comes a Toxicroak, right? Yeah. Axe induces Mega Evolution with his Keystone, transforming Manectric into Mega Manectric. As it faces off with the Toxicroak, they do battle, Manectric managing to get the upper hand on Toxicroak, zapping it. Shauna then tells them, hey, as we see Cassius watching. He tells X, didn't I tell you to stay inside the car? And X says, why should I take orders from you? He has a deadpan expression, but Manectric is just outright just growling at Cassius. Cassius says, yeah, okay, you got a point there, but without taking his hands outside of his pocket, he releases his Gorgeist. It's Gorgeist, right? Like a poltergeist, but a gorge poltergeist, so Gorgeist. It immediately wraps one of his tendrils around Manectric's neck. Cassius says, I got plans of my own, and I can't let you interfere with the search for your girlfriend's mom, for real. Oh man, Manectric is really facing off. Why is X so confrontational here? Trevor says shoot, because we see that X is getting ready to unleash Kangaskhan, but Trevor back, pushes him to the side saying, sorry Cassius. X says, what are you doing, Trevor? And Trevor blocks X from Cassius, saying, this Manectric elect is X's new Pokemon. He needs to have practice battles with it. X wants to become stronger to protect us, so he can't stay inside the van all the time. X shouts at Trevor, but Trevor says, shh, don't rock the boat. We're depending on this guy for a ride. You have to get to Silage City as fast as we can for Y's sake, and to do that we need Cassius's help. X says, hey Trevor, Professor Sycamore, now this guy? Aren't you a little too trusting of these grown-ups? I haven't been able to close the distance between us yet. Okay, see, now X is kind of acting the way that I thought he would. I mean, Sycamore was one thing, but I don't know, what's putting him on edge about Cassius? X slams the door as he enters back into the van. Trevor bows at Cassius, saying, "Sorry, Cassius." Cassius waves it off, saying, "No problem. I'm used to it." Trevor then looks to Shauna and Tierno. Trevor then thinks to himself, "I knew it. Only Y can unite the five of us." Is that really it? Is it because Y hasn't really given the go-ahead when it comes to this guy? No. I seem to be pretty cool with Sycamore, and X still didn't trust him. I guess we then cut to Team Flare's base. It's been a while since we picked up with Team Flare. A figure approaches Zerosik, Mabel, and Aliana, saying, "That day when Yveltal and Xerneas fought each other at Vanaville Town, a lot of townspeople and Pokemon went missing. What happened to them?" Zerosik says, "It would have been a pity to waste all those resources. So we captured them. The townspeople are all in the dungeon here, and I've placed all of the Pokemon inside a special Pokeball. There's one woman who keeps trying to escape, so I raised the security level on her." The figure says, "I see. And what are you going to do with these people?" Zerosik says, "I got permission from the boss to transport the big tree. We don't have enough grunts to move it." We see the grunt from before. As the figure says, "Oh, I see. I guess all those hostages are stronger than a few grunts. So it was you, huh? The boss ordered you to collect the Megastones, but not only have you failed, you also let the enemy get a hold of the list." "Yeah, the one who stole the Mega Evolution Stone from Manectric." The grunt says, "I'm so sorry." The figure says, "You can't erase your failures, but I will forgive you for 2 reasons. First, the Gyarados site. Our boss is using it, but you're the one who found it, right? And secondly, because of him." Oh man, we see that they have, I'm completely blanking on his name. Clemon. Oh man, I didn't think he'd end up in the capture by Team Flare. The figure says, "Luckily for you, you left the Esper at the scene of the battle. That's how we managed to capture him." Grunt says, Thank you. The figure says, "Like I said, you're lucky." The figure then lifts up a case and calls out to Zerosik. He says, "I'm listening." The figure says, "I'll need some soldiers. I'll be taking some of the captured townspeople with me, and the Pokemon too. Oh, what's this?" She pulls out the Pokedex and Fennekin, although she dismisses the Pokedex. It's very obvious who this is. She takes the Fennekin but drops the Pokedex, saying, "Nice, I'll take this. Oh, and Aliana." Aliana says yes. The figure says, as they step on the friggin' Pokedex with their high heel, "I lent you my Pyro, but I heard that you haven't been able to make good use of it. I want it back." Aliana says, "What?" The figure says, "I'm moving up in the ranks, you know." "Oh, moving up?" Aliana hands over the Pyroar, mumbling to herself, as we see Malva and her Pyroar, saying, "I'm the one who stands behind the boss. I have to look good," as we see her next to a picture of Lysander. So she's officially become second in command, huh? They then pick over with the gang, Cassius entering into the van saying, "Sorry to keep you waiting. Let's go." They question, "What about your assistants?" Cassius says, "They're waiting in the backyard." The butler says, "Thank you for all your hard work, Cassius. Now the ranked trainers who visit the Battle Chateau will be able to move the trays and use the battle box with ease." Cassius says, "No need to thank me. I'm only doing my job. And I can use that, right?" Percy says, "You're free to use it as you wish." Hannah says, "Are you sure about this, Trez? What's happening?" Kara says, "Ow." Cassius then says, "Okay, out you go." Oh, as we see a helicopter. Oh, geez. Cassius and the kids board the helicopter, leaving his gang behind. They say, "What a surprise. Why did you change from land to air?" Cassius says, "If I didn't, you'd have to go through a place called the Connecting Cave to get to Silage City. It's a pitch-black cave infested with Zubat. You wouldn't want to deal with that, would you? For real. It's a scary place, but the main problem is that it would be a perfect place for an ambush by those people who are after you. For real." The kids all look at each other. Cassius says, "So? It's best to avoid the cave." I love that his Gorgeist is sitting in the passenger seat giving him a nod. Cassius says, "I recall something about the about Four Eyes, too. The name Clement, and his so-called status as Kalos' greatest inventor. I should have remembered earlier. He's the gym leader of Lumia City, for real. The Prism Tower is also a Pokemon gym, but the blackout has been causing a lot of problems lately. Maybe that's why he was visiting Salad. Her says, come to think of it, Alec came from Prism Tower, right? You know Clement? Electric nods. Trina says, you must be worried about him. I hope he's alright. Cassie then says, China says, what is it? Cassie says, something's on the radar and it's heading straight for us. 10, no, 15. There's even more than that. A figure flies past the window. China notices. Tina says, that shadow. China says, it's the same flying suit as Y's. China says, that means they must be sky trainers. There's a whole horde of them surrounds the helicopter. Which, that's incredibly dangerous. Like, my god. Why are there so many sky trainers surrounding the helicopter? Like, get away from the blades, you dum-dum. As we see that our current location, we've gone from Route 7, the Riviera Walk. The longest single road in the Kalos region runs straight alongside one of the greatest rivers, to the Battle Chateau to above the connecting caves. This cave linking Route 7 and Salad City is notable for its great hordes of Zubat that use an air route to avoid the caves. Okay. Yeah. Anytime you can avoid the Zubat, it's a good time. Okay, so everybody's getting a little bit of help in one way or another. The kids have met up with Cassius, who is the person maintaining the PC Pokemon storage system in the Kalos region, and he seems like a pretty cool dude, but X seems to have his reservation. Maybe he's just a little on edge because Y's a little out of sort. It's kind of hard to tell what's making him fully distrust Cassius, because he's trusted other people before, and he trusted Clement out of the blue. If he has good instincts, I don't know. Maybe it's someone that's connected to Cassius that he distrusts? Hard to say. But we also have Karina traveling with Diantha. He said that Gherkin's on a little bit of a timetable because of his injuries. And things are getting a little bit heated. Why are these sky trainers all just surrounding the helicopter? Well, it's been an interesting few chapters. Not the best. Nothing really intense has happened. But it's been pretty fun, so let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the ride. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I hope to see you later. So then, take care. Bye-bye.